Hello, welcome to my channel. This is lesson 2 for the mobile drawing app, Ibis Paint. In this video I will show you a step-by-step guide to color your hand sketch into a clean-looking drawing. From importing the sketch, drawing the line art, creating the base color layer, and filling in the shading. If you haven't seen my lesson 1 video, you can still follow the guideline. But if you are very confused on the functionality of some tools, I highly recommend you to check out the first lesson. So let's begin. Here is the quick doodle that I did on paper, very simple chibi style character. And I recommend beginners to make a simple drawing with less detail as well. It will make the work faster and easier to follow. Looking at the sketch, I will need to resize the head a little bit since it is too big here. And I want to resize and move the mouth just a little bit. So first open up Ibis Paint, go to My Gallery. Tap on the plus on the lower left corner, and import picture. Now find the sketch photo that you took with your phone camera and load it up. It will ask you if you want to resize the picture if it is too big. The original size is too big but the recommended size is too small. So I will keep it at original size and resize it later. I will also ask you if you want to extract the line for your sketch. I will do the line art later, so I will choose to cancel here. Now to resize it, I will tape the pen, or the tool icon and go to Canvas. Choose Resize with the DPI icon and I will set the height to 2000 pixels. I recommend you to set the same height for your drawing so you can follow the brush size I am going to use soon. Next, I will modify the sketch first before going into line art. Choose the lasso tool and select the head only. Using transformation tool I will resize the head into a more reasonable size. Tap the check mark to confirm the edit, deselect the selection and I will do the same for the mouth. Now that I am happy with the overall sketch, I will start creating the line art. Go to the layer panel, and lower the opacity so it appears light gray but still clear enough to see the lines. I am at 22% here. Next, add a new layer and make sure it is on top of the sketch layer. Switch back to the pen tool. And turn on the stabilizer for smoother lines. Also turn on the force fade function to create pointier line edges so it doesn't appear too harsh. About 20% on both ends is a good start. Make sure you are using the dip pen, hard, brush. Not all brushes support the force fade function. Brush size 2 to 2.5 is a good range to start the work here. Now carefully trace all the lines and create the first line art section. I am using a non-pressure sensitive stylus on a tablet here, so I am not zooming in a lot. If you are doing it with your finger on a phone, you will find yourself zooming in and out a lot and that is okay. Take your time and try to perfect the lines here. So here I find the hand to be a little too big. I am using the lasso tool and resize it down a bit. At any point of the line art if you find the proportion not looking right, you should change it before going in detail. It took me about 12 minutes and the first line section is finished. Now go to the layer and delete the sketch layer since it is no longer needed. Just leave the line art layer on only. I am moving the location for the eyes just like how I edit the hand. Next step is to add more line variety to the baseline art. I am using a thicker brush size, about 4.5. And change the force fade to about 15%. Now simply draw on top of the lines and focus on the outline mostly. For example, I am thickening the outline for the ear but not the lines inside the ear. Another example is the scarf. the skirt, and the shoes. Also make sure to close all lines and leave no opening between lines, this will make the coloring a lot easier. After the line art is all finished, I am at 25 minutes of the drawing so far. Time to move on to the coloring. Go to the layer panel, add a new layer and drag it down under the line art layer. I always start by coloring the skin first. Instead of choosing a very light color for the skin, I always pick a darker color first, and I will explain why later. Now choose the bucket tool. Set the expansion to 1.5 and reference layer to canvas. And tap on the skin parts. On some parts that the bucket tool won't fill in, use the pen tool and color it up, usually on line edges. If you are coloring with a very light color here, it will be very hard to find the missing color spot. And that is why I always pick dark color first. After you are all done with filling in the skin color, I will pick a lighter skin color here. Use a large brush size and turn off stabilizer and force fade for easier fill up. Make sure you turn on alpha lock on the skin layer first, otherwise the color will go off the place. You can rename the layer if you need to. Next, for the shading, add a new layer on top of the skin layer, and turn on clipping. A small tip on choosing color: I always move the hue ring a little bit together with the shade color. For example, on the skin base color I am at orange to red hue, and for the shading I will move the hue toward the red side. This will create just a little bit more diversity to the color when it is all filled up. Change the brush type to airbrush normal. Lower the opacity a little and make sure to use a larger size. Now just tap on parts of the skin to create a little bit of gradient so it doesn't look too plain. Next I will choose a very slight pinkish color and apply some blush to the character below the eyes, knees, hands so they look more adored. With the soft shading done, we can move on to some hard shading. We will add a new layer and clip it below the skin layer again. Switch back to the dip pen, hard. Turn back the stabilizer on and force fade on and increase the start and end to a bigger number. This will create a pointier line edge. Pick an even darker color, one that is noticeably darker than the original skin tone so we can really differentiate the shading. We will pick a light source, assume light coming from the upper left, we will focus on adding shadow on the lower right here. Apply shadows on parts that intersect each other, such as skin under hair and neck. And where skin is attached to clothes. Also put shading to show the depth of the body parts, such as to make the leg and arm look cylindrical, Make sure to focus shade on the right side. Before finishing, I will create the eye white and put some white specks on the face and knee. This is optional. After skin coloring is done and making sure I won't change it again, I usually merge all the skin layers together into one just to keep the layers from cluttering. Next we will move on to the eye coloring. Open a new layer on top of the skin and pick a base color for the eye. Bucket tool to fill it up just like the skin. Being lazy, I will color the mouth together in the same layer. After base color is done, instead of adding a new layer and clip it for shading, I often just use alpha lock for the eyes because eye coloring is simple in my style. Pick a darker color and draw the eye like so. Repeat with even darker color. And finish with a near black dot for the iris. To create some highlighting on the eye, I pick a light green color. Smaller brush size and bigger force fade setting to create specks under the iris. Finish off with a highlight on the top and further whiten it with pure white color. Lower the opacity and adjust the force fade accordingly for more highlights if preferred. I quickly color the mouth here. And merge the layer with the skin layer into one. Now we are only having the line art layer and skin layer only, easy to understand. Moving on to the hair, follow the same procedure for the skin. Open a new layer, bucket tool to fill up the base color and make sure to fill up each small dots with the pen tool. Rename the hair layer, open another layer and clip it to the hair layer for shading. Use the airbrush again and add some gradient to the hair with a darker color. I apply it to the top and bottom of the hair. Soft shadow is done. Next to open a new layer and clip it again for hard shadow, which I forgot to do here. Increasing the force fade value will create sharper hairlines and makes hair shading much easier. Make sure to focus on shading on the right side given our light source is on the left. Next, to create highlights for the hair, I am actually going to do it in a different way here. Open a new layer and clip it under the hair, and change the layer mode to add. Now with the same dark shadow color that we just used, it becomes a lighter color in this layer mode. Try it first, and if it is not bright enough, select a lighter color and see how it goes. Add highlights from the left and slowly fade out to the right. To finish it off, I am switching back to airbrush and add a light strip over the highlight to brighten it up. I also lightly add it from the bottom up of the hair as well. This will create some transparency to the skin. Merge all the hair layers and call it done. You can merge it to the skin together, but I prefer to leave the hair separate from the skin. Next is just to color the other parts of the character using the same method. Open a new layer. Use the bucket tool to fill base color. Open a new layer for shading again and clip it under base color. Add shading with darker color and focus on the right side. Set the force fade value higher when you need a sharper line. If you need to add highlights, try creating a layer with add mode and test it. After finishing each part, merge the layer if you are afraid of confusion, but this is totally optional. That is all the tips I have for basic coloring. One final tips I have here. After finishing everything, I find some parts off place, especially eyes, and one foot being too small. I can do a quick mesh transform here and move it to the right place. Go to the layer panel, on the special layer, choose add layer from canvas. This will create a new layer with everything on the canvas, without having to merge each layer together. With this layer created, move it to the top and hide all the other layers. Now we can mess with this layer without worry to destroy the drawing. If something goes wrong, I can simply delete it and enable all my other layers again. With this layer selected, go to Transform tool and take Mesh Form. You will see a 3x3 box on the character, and we can add more with the division 10 and Y. After adding a good enough points to the control, we can drag each dot and lightly modify the overall drawing. So if the head is too big, slightly drag each dot around the head inside and make it small or so. This sums up everything for my tutorial for basic coloring. I hope you find it helpful. Stay tuned for my next video.